No one in the Carter family remembers when Emily first said it. There was no dramatic argument, no slammed doors, no shouting match that froze the room. It happened quietly. So quietly that, for years, everyone convinced themselves it hadn't happened at all. Emily Carter was 17 when she looked up from the kitchen table one evening, fork paused halfway to her mouth, and said, "Mom, Dad isn't my real father." The sentence landed softly, but it didn't leave. Rachel Carter remembers the moment in fragments. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock above the sink, the way the overhead light flickered once, then steadied. Across the table, her husband Mark let out a short laugh. "That's not funny," he said, smiling as if Emily had told a joke that missed. Emily didn't smile back. "I'm not joking." Rachel remembers the way her stomach dropped, not sharply but slowly, like an elevator sinking too far past its floor. "Where is this coming from?" she asked carefully. Emily shrugged. "I don't know. I've just always felt it." Mark's fork clinked against the plate. "You look exactly like me," he said. "Same eyes. Same nose." Emily shook her head. "I don't see it." Rachel remembers how quickly she moved to smooth things over. Teenagers say strange things. Identity confusion. Hormones. Stress. She laughed it off. Changed the subject. Told herself it was nothing. But Emily didn't take it back. She never brought it up again, but she never let it go either. Over the next year, small things changed. Emily stopped calling Mark Dad in casual conversation. She started watching old home videos alone, rewinding certain moments again and again. She asked oddly specific questions. What was I like as a baby? Who was at the hospital when I was born? Did anyone else visit? Rachel answered each one without hesitation. She had nothing to hide. At least that's what she believed. Emily left for college 2 years later, but the question followed her. It sat in the back of her mind through dorm rooms and late-night study sessions, through new friendships and failed relationships. Sometimes she would catch her reflection in a mirror and tilt her head, studying herself like a stranger. The shape of her jaw, the way her smile pulled slightly to one side. She didn't look like Mark. Not really. And the older she got, the more that thought burrowed in. By the time Emily was 26, it wasn't a feeling anymore. It was a certainty. So she ordered the DNA test. She didn't tell anyone. Not her friends. Not her parents. Not even her boyfriend, who joked that genealogy kits were just modern horoscopes. Emily waited until a Sunday afternoon alone in her apartment to spit into the tube. She sealed the box, dropped it in the mail, and tried not to think about it. For 3 weeks. The email arrived at 2:13 a.m. Emily hadn't been sleeping. She stared at the subject line for nearly a minute before opening it. "Your DNA results are ready." Her hands were shaking. She clicked. The page loaded slowly like it was hesitating. Then the words appeared. "Paternity match, 0%. Emily blinked, scrolled down, refreshed the page. Again. The number didn't change. Mark Carter, listed as her father, was genetically unrelated to her. She sat there in silence, heart pounding, waiting for panic to arrive. But it didn't. Instead, there was relief. Cold, certain, terrifying relief. "I knew it," she whispered to the empty room. But relief turned to confusion almost immediately, because beneath the paternity result was another section. Close relative match identified. Emily clicked. A name appeared she had never seen before. David Rowan. Estimated relationship. Biological father. Her breath caught. David Rowan. Age 52. Location, undisclosed. Last activity, recent. This wasn't a dead end. This was a door. Emily didn't sleep that night. By morning she had sent the message. David responded 3 days later. His reply was short. Too short. "I think there's been a mistake." Emily stared at the screen. She typed back. "I don't think there has." There was a long pause before his next message arrived. "Your mother's name, Rachel Carter?" Emily felt her chest tighten. "Yes." The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "We need to talk." They agreed to meet at a coffee shop off the highway. Neutral. Public. Anonymous. Emily arrived early. She chose a seat near the window and wrapped her hands around a cup she wasn't drinking. At 10:17 a.m., a man walked in and scanned the room. Tall, graying hair. A face marked by lines that didn't come from smiling. Their eyes met. Emily knew immediately. He sat across from her slowly, like the chair might collapse under him. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Finally he said it. "You look like her." Emily swallowed. My mom? David nodded. She was 21, he said. When I last saw her. Emily's heart was pounding now. You knew she was pregnant? David's jaw tightened. No. The word landed heavy between them. I didn't know about you, he continued. I swear. I would've. Emily raised a hand. That's not why I'm here. He studied her carefully. Then why are you? Emily leaned forward. Because if you're my biological father, and Mark isn't, then something doesn't add up. David didn't answer. His gaze dropped to the table, to his hands. Emily's voice softened. What happened, David? For a long time he said nothing. Then he whispered, Your mother didn't tell you? Emily shook her head. He looked up, eyes wet now. Then she kept her promise. Emily's stomach twisted. What promise? David swallowed hard. To never tell anyone what happened that night. Emily left the cafe an hour later with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. This wasn't a secret about infidelity. This was something darker. Something older. Something buried. And it had been waiting 30 years for someone to dig it up. Rachel Carter had spent 30 years perfecting the art of forgetting. Not the gentle kind of forgetting that fades naturally over time, but the deliberate kind. The kind that requires discipline, routine, silence. She built her life carefully after Emily was born. A steady marriage, a respectable home, a husband who adored her, and a daughter who never questioned her place in the world. Until she did. Rachel had always known this day might come. She just never believed it would. Rachel was 21 the night everything happened. It was late September, unseasonably warm. The kind of night where the air clings to your skin. She remembered the exact smell of it, damp asphalt and cigarette smoke. She had been driving home from her shift at the diner, exhausted, replaying the same arguments in her head about money, about school, about whether she was wasting her life. She never saw the car pull up beside her until it was too late. Blue lights flashed once. Just once. Rachel pulled over instinctively. The man who approached her car wore a uniform. Not a police officer, but close enough that she didn't question it. He asked for her license. Told her there had been a report of a vehicle matching hers involved in a hit and run. Rachel's hands shook as she passed him her ID. She hadn't done anything wrong. That's what made her step out of the car when he asked. That's what made her follow him toward the darkened service road, away from traffic. That's what made her trust him. The assault lasted less than 10 minutes. Rachel would later struggle to explain how something so brief could destroy so much. She remembered fragments. The rough gravel biting into her palms. The smell of gasoline. The sound of a passing truck that never slowed. She remembered trying to scream and realizing no sound was coming out. And she remembered his voice. Calm, controlled, almost bored. When it was over, he told her something she would never forget. If you tell anyone, he said, adjusting his belt, no one will believe you. Then he walked away. Left her there, alone. Rachel never reported it. She went home, showered until her skin burned, threw away her uniform. And the next morning, she told herself it had been a nightmare. 2 weeks later, the nausea began. By the time the doctor confirmed the pregnancy, Rachel had already decided. She would survive. She would keep the baby. And she would never, ever, tell anyone what had happened. When Mark entered her life 6 months later, it felt like a second chance. He was kind. Predictable. He didn't ask questions she didn't want to answer. When she told him she was pregnant, she expected him to leave. Instead, he took her hands and said, "We'll figure this out together." He married her knowing the child wasn't biologically his. He chose Emily before she was even born. And Rachel let him. Because it meant the past could stay buried. Or so she thought. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Rachel was folding laundry when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. "Mrs. Carter?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. This is Detective Laura Henley with the County Cold Case Unit. I need to ask you a few questions about a man named David Rowan." Rachel's knees gave out. She sat down hard on the edge of the bed. I don't know anyone by that name," she said automatically. There was a pause on the other end. "Mrs. Carter," the detective said gently, "your daughter took a DNA test." The room tilted. She matched to a biological parent who is currently under investigation for a violent crime committed 30 years ago. Rachel closed her eyes. The past had found her. Emily received the message that evening. Her mother wanted to talk. Urgently. They met at Rachel's house. The same house Emily grew up in, now feeling unfamiliar. Rachel looked smaller than Emily remembered. Older. fragile in a way she'd never seen before. "I should have told you," Rachel said before Emily could speak. "I wanted to. So many times." Emily sat down slowly. "Tell me what?" she asked. Rachel's voice broke. "The truth." And then, for the first time in 30 years, Rachel Carter told her daughter everything. Emily listened in silence. No interruptions. No questions. When her mother finished, the room felt hollow. "So David Rowan," Emily said carefully, "he wasn't just someone you dated." Rachel shook her head. "No. He raped you." Rachel flinched at the word, but nodded. Emily's chest burned. "All this time," she whispered. "All this time you protected him." Rachel looked up sharply. "I protected you," she said. "I didn't want that man to exist in your life. I didn't want you carrying that weight." Emily stood. "But now I am," she said. "Because he exists whether we acknowledge him or not." Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's being investigated now?" Emily nodded. "For the murder of a woman named Claire Holloway." Rachel froze. Her blood ran cold. "That name?" she said slowly. "I've heard it before." Emily's heart pounded. "Where?" Rachel swallowed. "On the news," she said. "Back then. Not long after what he did to me." Emily's eyes widened. "What happened to her?" Rachel looked at her daughter, fear and guilt colliding. "She disappeared," she said. "And they never found her." Emily left that night with a single thought echoing in her mind. David Rowan didn't just take something from her mother. He took something from someone else. And this time, someone was finally asking questions. Claire Holloway disappeared on a Thursday. That detail mattered to Detective Laura Henley because Thursdays were ordinary. No holidays. No storms. No known disturbances. People vanished more easily on ordinary days. Claire was 27 years old. A graduate student. A waitress on weekends. The kind of woman neighbors described as quiet but kind because they didn't really know her well enough to say more. On the night she disappeared, she worked a closing shift at a downtown restaurant. Security footage showed her locking the back door at 11:38 p.m. She adjusted her jacket, slung her purse over her shoulder, and walked toward her car. She never made it home. Her apartment door was still locked from the inside the next morning. Her cat hadn't been fed. Her phone rang endlessly on the kitchen counter. There was no blood, no struggle, no witnesses, and for decades no answers. Detective Henley spread the old case files across her desk, rereading details most people had forgotten. Claire Holloway had been last seen 2 miles from where Rachel Carter had been assaulted. Same month, same year. The overlap gnawed at her. The original investigation had focused on Claire's ex-boyfriend, then a coworker, then a stranger. All dead ends. But one name appeared repeatedly in the margins of the file, never circled, never highlighted. David Rowan. He had been questioned briefly. He passed a basic interview. No alibi confirmed. No evidence tying him to the scene. And in 1989, that was enough to let a man walk away. Emily learned about Claire Holloway sitting in her car outside her apartment. The detective had emailed her scanned documents, old photographs, typed reports, faded witness statements. Emily stared at Claire's picture. Dark hair, gentle smile, eyes that looked like they expected the world to be fair. She felt something twist inside her. "She could have been my mother," Emily whispered. Or worse, she could have been her future. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She replayed her mother's confession in her head. The fake uniform, the quiet voice, the confidence. David Rowan hadn't been reckless. He had been practiced, which meant Rachel likely wasn't his first victim. And Claire probably wasn't his last. The DNA test had reopened everything. When Emily uploaded her results, she'd expected curiosity, maybe closure. What she got instead was a match to a man listed under law enforcement interest. David Rowan. Age 54. Current residence, unknown. Employment history, inconsistent. Known aliases, multiple. The test didn't just link Emily to him. It linked him to her mother. And to Claire Holloway. Detective Henley flew out to meet Rachel in person. They sat at the same kitchen table where Rachel had once braided Emily's hair before school. "Why didn't you come forward?" Henley asked gently. Rachel's hands trembled around her mug. "I was scared," she said, "and ashamed, and young. And he told me no one would believe me." Henley nodded. "Did you ever see him again?" Rachel hesitated, then nodded once. "Years later," she said, "at a grocery store." Henley's pen froze. "He looked at me," Rachel continued, like he recognized me, like he was amused that I'd survived. What did he do? Henley asked. Nothing, Rachel said. That was the worst part. When police finally tracked David Rowan down, he was living in a trailer just outside a dying town. No wife, no children, no permanent job. He didn't seem surprised when officers knocked. I wondered when this would happen, he said calmly. During questioning, he denied everything. Rachel, Claire, Emily, all coincidences, all lies. But his DNA told a different story. It placed him near Claire Holloway's belongings. It linked him biologically to Emily, and it reopened wounds the justice system had buried. Emily requested to be present during one of the interviews, against protocol, but Henley allowed it. David Rowan sat across the table, hands folded. When he saw Emily, something flickered across his face. Recognition, not guilt, curiosity. You look like her, he said. Emily felt her stomach drop. My mother, she replied. He smiled faintly. She was strong, he said. Stronger than most. Emily leaned forward. Did you kill Claire Holloway? David's smile faded. I didn't kill anyone, he said softly. People disappear all the time. Emily stood abruptly, because she finally understood something terrifying. David Rowan didn't need to confess. He believed he was untouchable. And for 30 years, he had been right. The box was heavier than it looked. Detective Laura Henley lifted it from the evidence locker with both hands, the cardboard edges softened by time. Written in thick black marker across the top were 4 words that made her pause. Holloway, unresolved. Inside were fragments of a life that had stopped too suddenly to leave clean answers. A cracked leather wallet. A set of keys that no longer opened anything. A gold necklace tangled in an evidence bag. And at the bottom, sealed, labeled, and never fully tested, a brown paper envelope. Henley already knew what was inside. But knowing and seeing were two different things. The envelope contained fibers, collected from beneath Claire Holloway's fingernails. In 1989, forensic testing had been limited. The lab report attached to the envelope read like an apology. Insufficient sample for conclusive comparison. Stored for potential future analysis. Future analysis. 34 years later, the future had finally arrived. Emily sat alone in her apartment while the lab ran the tests. She hadn't told anyone she was doing this. Not friends, not co-workers, not even her mother. Some truths felt too fragile to share until they were real. She kept replaying David Rowan's voice in her head. People disappear all the time. It wasn't just what he'd said. It was how comfortable he'd been saying it. Rachel Carter, meanwhile, sat in her car outside the police station for nearly 20 minutes before going inside. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. For decades, she had lived with the knowledge that the man who hurt her was still out there. Now he had a name again. A face. A file. But reopening the past meant reopening wounds she had spent a lifetime stitching closed. Still, she walked in. Because if she didn't now, she never would. The lab results came back 3 days later. Henley stared at the screen, jaw tight. The fibers beneath Claire Holloway's fingernails were consistent with a synthetic blend used in a specific type of jacket. One that had been manufactured in the late 1980s. One brand. One model. Discontinued in 1991. Henley flipped open David Rowan's old employment records. Security guard. Mall patrol. Night shifts. And then she found it. A grainy photograph attached to a payroll file. David Rowan, 1989. Standing outside a shopping center. Wearing the jacket. Is it enough? Emily asked quietly when Henley showed her. Henley didn't answer right away. It's strong, she said carefully. But strong isn't always enough. What do you mean? The jacket was mass-produced, Henley replied. The defense will argue coincidence. Secondary transfer. Contamination. Emily felt her chest tighten. But it puts him with her, she said. It shows she fought back. Yes, Henley agreed. But it doesn't show when. Or how. Or why, Henley didn't say. The prosecutor was less optimistic. He flipped through the file, sighing. Circumstantial, he said. Compelling but circumstantial. DNA connects him to Emily, Henley argued. Pattern behavior. Victim proximity. Fibers under the victim's nails. And no body, the prosecutor replied flatly. Silence filled the room. No body, he repeated. No confirmed cause of death. No timeline. No eyewitness. Rachel sat rigid in her chair. So he just gets away with it? She asked. The prosecutor didn't meet her eyes. Justice doesn't always arrive the way we want it to, he said. David Rowan was released pending further investigation. Again. When he walked out of the station, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. He said nothing. But as he passed Emily, he slowed. Just for a moment. You should have let sleeping dogs lie, he murmured. Emily didn't flinch. She watched him walk away, feeling something colder than fear settle in her chest. Resolve. That night, Emily dreamed of Claire Holloway. She had never met her. But in the dream, Claire stood at the edge of a road, trying to speak. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Emily woke up crying. The next morning, Henley received a call from an evidence technician. There's something you need to see, he said. What now? Henley asked. The envelope, he replied. The one with the fibers. Henley's heart skipped. What about it? There's an impression on the inside flap, he said. Indented writing. Like someone pressed down hard on a notepad on top of it. Henley grabbed her coat. Because sometimes the past didn't speak loudly. Sometimes, it whispered. The evidence room smelled like dust and disinfectant, old truths and new hope colliding in the air. Detective Laura Henley leaned over the metal table as the technician slid the envelope beneath a forensic light. The brown paper looked unremarkable at first. Creased, yellowed, forgotten. Then the light shifted, and letters appeared. Not ink, not pencil, pressure marks. Someone, decades ago, had written on a notepad resting on top of this envelope, pressing hard enough to leave an invisible record behind. Henley's breath slowed. Can you lift it? She asked. The technician nodded and began photographing, enhancing contrast digitally. Slowly, faint grooves sharpened into shapes. Words. A name. Henley felt her stomach drop, because the name emerging from the paper was one she already knew. Rowan D. Below it, a phone number, partially smudged, but legible enough. In 1989, this envelope had been handled by a patrol officer during the initial investigation. A man named Thomas Keene. Keene had died 12 years earlier from a stroke. But his notebook logs still existed, boxed away in county storage. Henley requested them immediately. When the box arrived, she flipped through brittle pages filled with tight handwriting, coffee stains, and half-finished thoughts. And there it was. A page dated June 17, 1989. Suspicious mail observed near Holloway residence. Name given, Rowan David. Claims mall security. No cost to detain. Henley closed the notebook slowly. This wasn't new evidence. It was ignored evidence. Emily sat across from Henley later that afternoon, hands clasped tightly in her lap. They knew, she whispered. They suspected, Henley corrected. But suspicion doesn't always survive pressure. Pressure from who? Henley didn't answer, because they both knew. Back in 1989, David Rowan had been questioned, briefly. No follow-up. No alibi verification. No fiber comparison. The report ended with one sentence. No further action recommended. Emily felt sick. My mother was killed, she said quietly. And they just stopped. Henley met her eyes. Back then, cases involving single women, no witnesses, no body, they were often deprioritized, she said. It's not right, but it's true. Rachel Carter heard the update sitting alone in her kitchen. When Henley told her about the name in the envelope, Rachel pressed her hand to her mouth. He was always confident, Rachel said. That's what scared me. He didn't act like someone hiding. He acted like someone protected. The prosecutor reviewed the new findings with a sharper interest this time. This proves investigative negligence, he said. Not guilt. But it shows he was a suspect from the beginning, Henley argued. And that evidence pointing to him was dismissed. Yes, the prosecutor replied. Which helps a civil case, maybe. But criminally? He shook his head. Still not enough to put him away. Emily stood abruptly. So what? He gets to live his life while my mother's name stays in a box? No, Henley said firmly. He doesn't get silence anymore. The story broke 2 days later. Local man tied to decades-old murder via DNA and suppressed leads. David Rowan's face filled television screens. Former co-workers came forward. A woman from Ohio reported a near-identical encounter in 1992. Another in Kentucky. Same pattern. Same man. Always released. Always just short of proof. Public pressure mounted. And David Rowan vanished. His apartment was found empty. Clothes gone. Documents missing. Walls scrubbed clean. But in the bathroom trash, Henley found something overlooked. A torn envelope. Inside it, nothing. except faint indentations. Henley smiled grimly, because once you learned how to listen to the past, it never stopped talking. David Rowan didn't run because he was afraid of being caught. He ran because, for the first time in 30 years, people were looking at him the way he'd always feared they would, not as a respectable man with a quiet life, but as a question mark that refused to fade. When police entered his apartment, they didn't find panic. They found preparation. Every drawer was empty. Every hard drive removed. Every photograph missing except one. A framed picture left deliberately on the kitchen counter. David Rowan at 27. Smiling. Taken the same year Emily's mother disappeared. Detective Laura Henley stared at it longer than she should have. "People don't leave souvenirs unless they want to be remembered," she murmured. Rowan's car was discovered 3 days later at a long-term parking garage outside Albany. Paid in cash. No cameras inside the structure. No license plate on record entering. But the exit booth had caught something. Not the car. The driver. A man wearing a baseball cap low over his face, glancing at the camera just long enough for one thing to register clearly. He was smiling. Emily couldn't sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined Rowan somewhere nearby, watching news footage of her, watching her talk about her mother, watching the truth crawl toward him inch by inch. "Why didn't he kill himself?" she asked Henley during a late-night call. "People like him usually do." Henley exhaled slowly. "Because men like him don't think they're villains," she said. "They think they survived." Henley's team reconstructed Rowan's past with new urgency. What emerged wasn't a monster hiding in plain sight. It was something worse. A man who had slipped through cracks repeatedly, not by brilliance but by timing. 1989, questioned, released. 1992, reported by a woman who changed her mind. 1996, restraining order filed, later withdrawn. 2001, assault allegation deemed insufficient. Always just enough doubt. Always just enough silence. Until now. The DNA lab called on a rainy Thursday morning. The sound of rain tapping the office windows felt too fitting. "We have a partial familial match," the analyst said. "Not Rowan directly." Henley's heart jumped. "Then who?" "A man named Caleb Rowan." Henley froze. "Son?" "Yes. Born 1993. Emily's stomach twisted when she heard. "He has a family," she whispered. "Kids." "Two," Henley said quietly. The truth wasn't just chasing one man anymore. It was chasing a lineage. Caleb Rowan was brought in for questioning voluntarily. He looked nothing like his father. Softer. Younger. Nervous. "I didn't know," he said over and over again. "I swear I didn't know." Henley believed him. But when she asked one question, everything changed. "Did your father ever tell you about a woman named Margaret Holloway?" Caleb went pale. He used to talk in his sleep," Caleb said. "Names sometimes. I thought it was nightmares." "What names?" Caleb swallowed. "Hers." That night, Henley sat alone in the evidence room. She stared at the enhanced image of the pressure-written envelope again. Rowan D. Not rage. Not panic. Just presence. He had been there. Watching. Waiting. And when Margaret Holloway realized she wasn't alone, she had become a problem. A new warrant was issued. This time not just for David Rowan, but for every place he had ever run to when the heat grew warm. Cabins. Storage units. Seasonal rentals. And one location that made Henley's pulse quicken. A decommissioned hunting lodge near the state line. Purchased in cash. 1 year before Margaret disappeared. They arrived at dawn. The lodge sat quietly among the trees, moss climbing its wooden walls like time itself trying to reclaim the truth. Inside they found dust, cobwebs, and something else. A shallow groove carved into the floorboards. Parallel marks. Dragged. Restrained. Henley closed her eyes. "This is where it started," she said. But David Rowan wasn't there. What they found instead was a notebook. Leather-bound. Carefully preserved. The last page contained a single sentence written in shaky ink. "I didn't mean for it to last this long." Henley felt a chill crawl up her spine. Because men like Rowan never meant for consequences to last. The notebook didn't scream guilt. That was what unsettled Detective Laura Henley the most. There were no frantic confessions. No apologies. No pleas for forgiveness. Just observations. Dates. Locations. Weather conditions. David Rowan had documented moments the way some people record vacations. Detached, careful, almost proud of his memory. Henley flipped through the pages slowly, the silence of the lodge pressing in on her chest. Then she found the page that changed everything. She figured it out faster than I expected. Asked questions. Wouldn't let it go. Margaret Holloway, Emily's mother. Henley felt her jaw tighten. Below the sentence was a map, hand-drawn, crude but unmistakable. A stretch of woods. A creek bend. A rock formation shaped like a broken tooth. Coordinates scribbled beside it. Rowan hadn't just kept a record. He'd left a trail. The search team moved within hours. Emily insisted on being nearby, though Henley warned her not to come. "I've waited my whole life for this," Emily said quietly. "I'm not waiting in another room." No one argued. The woods were thick and damp, the kind of place sound disappeared into. Birds went silent as the team spread out. The coordinates led them to a narrow ravine where the ground dipped unnaturally, too smooth, too deliberate. A forensic tech knelt, then froze. "Ma'am," he said, "we've got disturbed soil." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Henley stepped forward. "Careful," she said. "This isn't just evidence. This is a voice." They worked slowly, layer by layer, and then, boom. Time didn't stop, but it fractured. Emily felt her knees weaken as Henley caught her arm. "We don't know yet," Henley said gently, "but this is significant." It was more than significant. It was confirmation. Margaret Holloway hadn't vanished. She had been placed. As forensic teams secured the site, Henley's phone rang. She didn't want to answer it, but she did. "Detective Henley," the voice said, "we've got something." "What?" "A financial record." "Very old." Henley closed her eyes. "Go on." "David Rowan withdrew a large sum in cash 3 days ago." Henley's heart sank. "He's alive." "Yes," the voice said, "and he knows we're close." That night, Emily sat alone in her childhood bedroom. The room looked exactly the same, except she wasn't. She held her mother's old scarf, the one that still smelled faintly of lavender. "She knew," Emily whispered to the empty room. "Didn't you?" The thought twisted inside her. Margaret Holloway hadn't just been a victim. She'd been a woman who recognized danger and paid for it. Henley couldn't sleep either. She replayed Rowan's patterns in her mind. He didn't disappear randomly. He vanished strategically. Every time the truth approached, he moved just far enough away to remain a rumor. Until now. But this time, something was different. He'd left the notebook. He'd left the map. He'd left the truth just close enough to be found. Which meant, "He wants to be seen," Henley muttered. The next message came 2 days later. Not a call. Not a letter. An email sent to the task force from an untraceable address. Subject line: "You're late." The body contained only one sentence. "She figured it out before you did." Attached was a photo. Blurry, dark, but unmistakable. Margaret Holloway, alive, looking directly at the camera. Fear in her eyes. Henley felt her blood run cold. This wasn't a confession. This was a reminder. Rowan wasn't hiding anymore. He was narrating. And now that the truth was unearthed, he was deciding how it would end. David Rowan didn't want to disappear. That was the realization Detective Laura Henley couldn't escape as she stared at the email again. "You're late. Men who want to stay hidden don't taunt the people hunting them. They don't leave maps. They don't preserve memories. They erase them." Rowan had done the opposite. He had curated his crimes. Henley stood before the task force, her voice steady but urgent. "He's not running anymore," she said. "He's circling." A younger detective frowned. "Why now?" Henley exhaled. "Because he's losing control of the narrative." She gestured to the photo projected on the wall, Margaret Holloway's terrified face frozen in time. For 30 years he decided who knew what, when, now. Now the truth is surfacing without his permission. Silence filled the room. "And men like Rowan," Henley added quietly, "don't tolerate that." Emily Holloway learned about the photo from Henley herself. They sat across from each other in a small interview room, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Henley slid the printed image across the table. Emily didn't reach for it at first. Her hands trembled. "Is that?" Her voice broke. "Yes," Henley said. "It's your mother." Emily finally picked it up. The woman in the photo was younger than Emily remembered, but unmistakably Margaret. The same eyes, the same curve of the mouth, but there was something else too. Recognition. "She knew," Emily whispered. "She knew he was dangerous." Henley nodded. "And she knew he wouldn't let her leave." Emily swallowed hard. "Why send this now?" "Because he wants you to see her," Henley said. "And because he wants us to know he still decides what happens next." Emily looked up sharply. Then he's wrong. Henley met her gaze. That's what we're here to prove. Rowan had made one mistake. Just one. He used the same phrasing across decades. In his notebook, in old letters, and now in the email. You're late. A forensic linguist flagged it immediately. The phrase appeared in 3 unsolved cases spanning different states, different years, different names, but the same voice. He's consistent, the linguist explained. He believes he's ahead. Always. Henley leaned back in her chair. Then let's catch up. They traced the email to a relay server bouncing between public libraries and abandoned office buildings, places Rowan had worked before. One location stood out. A shuttered print shop just outside the city. Power still active. No registered business. And security cameras installed, recently. He wants us to come, a detective said. Henley nodded. He always did. The building smelled like dust and ink. Henley entered first, gun raised, heart pounding. David Rowan, she called. It's over. No response. They moved deeper. And then they saw it. The walls were covered. Photos. Not just Margaret. Other women. Different years. Different places. Each one labeled with a date. And beneath every photo, a sentence. She figured it out. Emily stepped inside behind them. Henley turned. You shouldn't. But Emily wasn't listening. She walked slowly along the wall until she reached the last photograph. Her mother's, pinned neatly, centered, as if it mattered most. This is what he wanted, Emily said softly. To be seen. Henley's radio crackled. Detective, a voice said urgently. We've got movement. Before Henley could respond, the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, a voice. Come. Familiar. Recorded. I wondered when you'd arrive, it said. Emily's breath caught. Henley raised her weapon. The voice continued. You found her. Good. She deserved that. The lights flickered back on. The room was empty, except for one thing. A final note taped to the far wall. Henley crossed the room slowly and read it aloud. Truth doesn't bring justice. It only brings memory. Emily felt tears spill down her face. He's gone, she whispered. Henley stared at the words. No, she said quietly. He's close. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Somewhere nearby, David Rowan was watching the aftermath of his own unmasking. Satisfied. Not because he'd won, but because he'd been remembered. David Rowan was never found. That was the line that would appear months later in official reports, buried beneath technical language and passive phrasing. But the truth was simpler and far more disturbing. He was never meant to be found. In the days following the discovery of the print shop, law enforcement combed every inch of the surrounding area. Drones traced heat signatures through forests. Dogs followed fading scent trails to roads that led nowhere. Traffic cameras were reviewed frame by frame. Nothing. No body. No arrest. No confirmation of escape. Just absence. And absence, Henley knew, was Rowan's final message. Emily Holloway didn't return home right away. Instead, she asked to see her mother's old house one last time. The small suburban place where laughter once lived, where silence later took over. Henley accompanied her. They stood in the doorway of what had once been Margaret's bedroom. The air felt heavy. Do you think she knew she'd never be believed? Emily asked quietly. Henley considered the question. Yes, she said. And she lived with it anyway. Emily nodded slowly. That might be worse than dying. Forensic analysis of the print shop uncovered enough circumstantial evidence to close multiple cold cases. Enough to name David Rowan as the prime suspect in at least 6 disappearances. But without him in custody, there would be no trial, no verdict, no sentence. Just a truth that existed without consequences. The press descended quickly. Headlines screamed. DNA test reveals decades-old crime mother's secret unmasked serial predator suspect vanishes after exposure. Emily declined interviews. She had learned something vital from her mother's story. Being seen didn't always mean being safe. Weeks later, Henley received one final envelope. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. A childhood image of Emily and Margaret at the beach, taken from an angle no family member remembered. On the back, written in the same precise handwriting. She was braver than you'll ever know. Henley stared at it for a long time. Then she placed it into evidence. Even though she knew it wouldn't change the outcome. Emily chose to tell the truth publicly, not through television, but through a written statement released online. She wrote about her mother, about silence, about the danger of mistaking compliance for consent, and about how crimes don't vanish just because time passes. They wait. The post went viral, not because it named a killer, but because it named a reality too many recognized. Years later, a small plaque was placed in a community garden. No mention of David Rowan, only Margaret Holloway's name. And beneath it, she told the truth. The world just wasn't ready to hear it. Emily visited often. She would sit quietly, listening to the wind move through the trees. Sometimes she imagined her mother beside her. Not afraid, not silenced, just free. David Rowan was never arrested, never tried, never punished, but his anonymity, the thing he valued most, was destroyed. Every crime now bore his name. Every search result tied him to the truth he tried to control. He was no longer a ghost. He was a warning. And Emily Holloway lived with something few victims' children ever receive. Not justice, but certainty. She knew who her mother was. She knew what happened. And she knew that even when the law fails, the truth, once uncovered, never goes back to sleep.